Good morning, everyone. This is Otilia Baraboy. I'm the Executive Director of ARCS, American Romanian Cultural Society. We are very happy to have been the organizers of a series of events, sensory journeys, that promote Irina Georgescu's book, Carpathia. We strongly encourage you to get it. There is a link in our event where you can purchase it from the publisher. And actually any other book that you buy from them will also help our nonprofit. They are going to give us 20% of the sales after taxes. So I'm very happy this morning that we will discuss about an interesting tradition in Romania and Eastern Europe, and actually all over the world. That's the pickling foods for the winter. I read a little bit about this tradition. Apparently, according to the New York Food Museum, this is a tradition that dates back to the Mesopotamians who pickled foods in 2400 BC. So it's really amazing. Also, another amazing and amusing fact that I found out, it is that Cleopatra herself used to eat these foods, and she considered them to be the secret of her beauty, actually. And she transmitted this tradition to Julius Caesar, who gave pickled foods to his army because he thought that they were going to be stronger and more enduring. And also in the same vein, also Napoleon Bonaparte did that. You know, he was feeding his soldiers pickled foods. So it's really amazing because you have on one hand this pickled foods given, you know, associated with powers like to build up armies to conquer the world, and it was the same with Christopher Columbus, apparently, that brought pickled foods to America. And also in the communist era, and Irina is going to tell us more about it, the pickled foods were associated with the scarcity of resources that we all experienced. So everybody was pickling foods in their homes to compensate for the winter, the fact that lack of produce in the stores. So I'm just going to let Irina tell you more about this tradition. And Irina moved to the UK 10 years ago, is that right?
Yes, more than 10 years, yes.
More than 10 years ago, and she's a food writer. And Carpathia is her first book, right, Irina?
Yes, yeah, my debut cookery book, yeah.
Yeah, can you tell us more about Carpathia and then kind of proceed with a demo from your lovely kitchen this morning?
Yeah. Yes, well, hello everyone, and thank you for joining us. Carpathia is a book about Romanian cuisine. I have it here. I just wanted Romania to be part of this culinary movement that's developing at the moment in the UK, in the US, about Eastern European countries. And I wanted Romania to be on this map because we have some, you know, amazing foods, delicious foods, and even if sometimes it's not unique to Romania, we still eat, you know, in the same way in Eastern Europe, and we use our own ingredients and in our own way. And for instance, if we look at our national dish, like sarmale, the sauerkraut stuffed leaves, people in Eastern Europe make this sort of dish, but with normal cabbage, not pickled, not fermented. So we make it with fermented cabbage. So that's, you know, very interesting to see how we use fermented foods in our cuisine, and obviously in our national dish as well. So this was basically the inspiration behind Carpathia, but also I wanted to tell people a little bit about Romanians and, you know, our family values and how we love to eat at home, you know, and our hospitality, because we're famous for it. And I wanted people to know, more people to know about it. So I put together, it took me 3 years to write the book and to publish it, and, you know, and a whole team from my literary agent and my publisher and everything. So it's a team effort, and it appears that, you know, people like it and like our food and appreciate that it's very like homely and it's food for the family that can feed the whole family. And this is the way we cook in Romania. We can feed the whole village, the whole city when we cook it, you know. So many dishes with so many, you know, different ways to serve them. So the book is on the market, you know, in the US, and obviously people can buy it through you and through my publisher's link. But today we are going to talk about fermented food, and mainly about fermented ingredients in brine, because there are two ways to preserve ingredients. One way is in brine, which is salt and water, and another way is in vinegar. So the food fermented in brine, basically it happens from like the end of July, like my dad used to make. When we have the first cucumbers, for instance, gherkin cucumbers in the garden, we make some fermented cucumbers, the summer way, the quick way basically, because it's so hot outside that we actually put the gherkins in ceramic pots, crocks, and we leave them outside in sunshine, in the heat, and they can ferment in 1 day. So, you know, in brine, and we put that pot in the fridge, and we eat them as a snack, like cold, and we also drink the brine, and it's so refreshing, and it's tangy, and it's sour and salty, and it's just, you don't need any water, you don't need any Coca-Cola or anything like this, you don't need any, you know, any other drinks, because in a way I think it balances the salt in your body as well. You know, you sweat a lot during the summer days, you know, it's very hot, and you need that salt to be put back in your body, and to drink this brine and to eat fermented foods like that in brine, they are really like quenching your thirst, you know, in a very healthy way. So actually for us, pickling starts at the end of July, for instance, or when you have your first cucumbers, wherever you are in the world, start to ferment them in ceramic pots right outside in the heat. But then we have the winter pickles. So those start like towards the end of, let's say, October, end of September, October. So when you put your cucumbers again in glass jars in brine, you also pickle the green tomatoes, what we call gogonele, and we ferment the sauerkraut. But we ferment sauerkraut instead of being shredded as we find it in the shops in jars. We ferment whole cabbages. So, and those whole cabbages later on, after fermentation in December, we take leaf by leaf, we take them apart and we roll them in, we stuff them with minced pork, with rice, and we bake them in tomato sauce, and we have our dish, our national dish called sarmale. So obviously, like you mentioned, Ottilia, during communist times, we really didn't have a lot of food around without anyway queuing for it, or, you know, not having food at all, basically. So in a way, we ate seasonally, because when something was in season, it was at the market, we were able to buy it and we were able to eat it fresh. But then when the season was gone, the vegetables were gone as well. So we wanted to start to preserve those, that surplus of produce. And it was very important, because basically from the end of November to the end of probably April, let's say, we don't have any fresh produce, you know. Then probably there are some spring onions at some point, but you basically eat what you preserved. So you eat from the jars, you eat your pickles, you eat your jams, you eat your compotes, you eat your pepper dips like zakuska, you eat your peppers in mustard sauce that you preserve, and so on. So we preserve we have so many dishes with preserved foods, because, well, it was a necessity during communist times, but it's also because it's a tradition. And as you mentioned, fermenting food is an ancient custom. And I just looked in a book. I just wanted to check my facts, and I looked in this dictionary, the Oxford Companion to Food. It's quite a big book. And what they say about sauerkraut, they believe that sauerkraut was obviously eaten in China like 2,000, 3,000 years ago. And the method of preparing sauerkraut was brought to Europe by the Tatars and the Tatar invasion in the 13th century. But there is a difference here, because you also mentioned the Romans, and that's true too. The method of actually making sauerkraut without any water. So that is the Chinese method, to layer the vegetables with salt and actually press them down. The salt will pull out the water from the vegetables, and they will ferment in their own juices. That is the sauerkraut style. While probably the Romans, when you mentioned pickling, and also in Mesopotamia, probably they were pickling in some sort of sour wine, so which is kind of resembles the vinegar pickles that we eat today. So the actual method of salting the vegetables like that was a Chinese method. So the Roman method was more like a sour wine, or a sort of vinegar, or meat, which is, water and honey fermented as well. So it is an ancient way of eating and preserving, and also it's a very healthy way, because our ancestors knew better. By fermenting in brine, it's a bit like pre-digested food. It's already broken down. It's already, you have all the minerals, you have all the vitamins already available for your body. So your body doesn't have to work that hard to process all that raw food in order to get those nutrients. Very often the body, if you eat raw like this, you just doesn't get the chance to extract all the vitamins and all the nutrients from the food. So by brining them, by fermenting them, you already give your body this all the minerals and the vitamins from the food. So that is very, very important, because especially nowadays, so many people talk about having a healthy gut, and that is having a healthy immune system, a strong immune system, and having a healthy life. So it's very important, especially in today's circumstances.
Irina, can you tell us a little bit more between the difference between pickled foods and fermented foods? I did a little bit of my research, and there were a few articles on this.
Well, fermented food is fermented with salt, fermented in brine, and that means that the lactic acid ferments from the vegetables and the salt, and that is what creates all the healthy benefits of fermented food. While pickles are in vinegar and sugar and water. It is true, some people actually like to combine them, so they put some salt as well, so they do half brine, half vinegar with sugar. But it's a more like sweetish kind of, and not like what we expect as Romanians from a pickle, which is like crazy tangy and salty and like a packed with flavor. So there is that way as well. So this is, I'm not sure if you read the same thing, that fermenting is in brine more than
yes,
or
right.
just natural fermentation occurs, like when you make bread.
Right.
You just leave water with salt and flour. If you don't put anything, they will ferment. That's the basis of a sourdough, for instance.
Yes, yeah, no, that totally answers my questions. I thought people would probably wonder about that, and
yes.
Maybe you can. Yeah.
So this is, we have 3 main vegetables that we need to have in the house as Romanians. So you need to have the fermented cucumbers. I have a plate here. I hope you can see it. Is it okay? Can you see it?
Yes.
Pickled cucumbers and fermented gogorele. So these are green tomatoes. These used to be, I mean, they should have been plum tomatoes. But I have a tomato grower just a few miles away from me, which is amazing. And I went to her and I said, please, can you give me some unripe tomatoes because I want to make these recipes. And she said, well, I actually want to wait for them to ripe so I can sell them. And I said, well, I just need a kilo or two, you know, just to make my gogonele. Because you can't find them in the shop. If you can find sauerkraut, but shredded, and you can find fermented cucumbers or pickled cucumbers in vinegar. You can find them in the shop. It's fine. But you can't find gogonele, and I can't have Christmas without gogonele and our pork roast, you see. So I really have to. 1 year I have to order them online, so they send them in a box. So there is no excuse, you know, for anyone. Just look online, and if you find a tomato grower, just go and talk to them, email them, say you want a box, and just pickle them at home because it's very, very easy.
Or even better, you can grow them yourself in your garden, and you can pick them whenever you want.
Well, absolutely. I can grow them, and I can assure you that all of them will be green because it rains so much in Wales, and it's very rarely hot, so they won't get anything.
The same in Seattle for sure. Yeah, it's the same here. So we should start a tradition of gogonele, you know, in all the failed tomatoes in our gardens.
Well, that's the thing, and you know we have the gogonele jam as well. So if you don't want to pickle, you can make a jam from the green tomatoes, and it's just a very nice recipe. It's a very complicated recipe at home to make it in a traditional way, but I simplified it and I put it in my book. So you can pickle them, or you can have jam, or you can have both, and you know enjoy the gogonele if you failed at having you know red tomatoes. So these are the two of them, the main fermented foods, and I have to say that you don't necessarily have to serve them as a side dish to main courses like meat, especially, or as a salad. I also have in a book a recipe with gherkin stew. So pickled gherkins in a tomato sauce, you cook them together with some onions. And at home, we can also add some chicken to the dish, but if it's Lent, so we can't eat anything that's animal, we just leave it like this and we eat it with bread. And if you use vegetable oil, like sunflower oil, it's vegan also. So you don't use any sour cream or anything like that. And you know, for my husband, when I make this, I make some steamed potatoes, or I make some noodles, and I serve them with noodles. And you can make the same recipe of the gherkin stew with fermented tomatoes. And you have everything there. You have the saltiness, you have the tanginess, you have it's crunchy from the skin of the cucumbers or the tomatoes. You know that Italians add a bit of vinegar in the tomato sauce when they make it for pasta, because the tanginess of the vinegar, you know, kind of enhances the sweetness of the tomatoes. Well, this is what we have. We have it all in one product. Just use fermented foods in your stews and in your soups, like broth, and you will have all the flavors there. And also the fact that if you are a vegetarian or vegan, you crave for a dish that has flavors and that you can identify the layers of flavors. So if you use fermented foods or smoked foods, like we use smoked prunes, for instance, you can have a lot of flavor in a dish that otherwise it could be really simple, you know, just vegetables. And anything can be pickled. So don't stick to these like two main ingredients like cucumbers and tomatoes. You can ferment turnips, carrots, peppers, obviously cabbage. Some chefs in the UK, because it's very trendy to ferment here, some chefs even ferment potatoes before they deep fry them, because they say there is a certain flavor in those potatoes when they are prepared like that. So just ferment anything and experiment. because fermentation is it's kind of a live process. It's like making bread. It also depends on what country you're in, if it rains outside, if it's too hot, if it's too cold, if it's too dry, So you need to basically start to ferment and then taste and see, is it too salty, is it too fermented, and you kind of learn from a jar or two, and they're all tasty anyway. So don't be discouraged that you need to ferment big quantities or it's complicated and you need to keep an eye on the jars, because it's not that complicated. It's very fuel effective. You don't have to slow cook anything. You don't want to waste any energy, any electricity, nothing. It's just water and salt, and you put them in a jar and you leave them there, and you will have a very nice ingredient at the end of it. The other thing that we ferment, and that's very important, and in my family it was my dad's job to do this, and I think in many families in Romania it's a man's job, this one, is to ferment the whole cabbages to make sauerkraut, as I said. But again, at home we had a huge barrel on the balcony. It was plastic, I'm afraid, I'm sorry to say, but it was, what we could find. And it was immense, because that, my parents had to feed 5 people from that, from December when you make, I don't know how many sarmale you make, 150, for instance, you need a lot of leaves. And then later on, when you cook with those leaves, you shred them and then you layer them like a lasagna, you layer them with rice and meat, and you bake them in the oven. You make varza la Cluj, for instance. Or you make what you call varza calită in a pan with oil. We eat noodles with sauerkraut. Again, if you make your own pasta at home, it's delicious to just put some sauerkraut on top. And caraway seeds as well on top. Just they go amazingly well together. So again, the fermented foods are not just for a salad, not just as a side dish. And in my book, I put a recipe for fermented cabbage, but just the leaves. So you don't have to ferment the whole thing. So you won't have to have a huge barrel in the house. So you make it in a jar and you just put the leaves in. Put the water on top, and you will have your sauerkraut to make sarmale, to stuff them. And you can stuff them even with, only rice, for instance, if it's a Lent dish. You can stuff them with polenta as well. You can mix polenta with some sort of, pork belly if you want to stuff them like that. There are loads of recipes.
Irina, where is this recipe from? I've never heard of it. Stuffed
with polenta.
With polenta, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I know it. I can't say it's from the south or it's from the east, because it's with polenta. Because polenta is just consumed, eaten all over the place. But it's the name in Romanian escapes me completely. There is a name. There is a very coarse cornmeal. You don't necessarily use it to make your Sunday polenta, for instance. But you boil it and then you stuff the leaves with it. And it can be sweet cabbage, not fermented or fermented, just depending on the season. It's a very nice vegetarian dish, actually. The name will come back to me, I'm sure, if I just let go now, because I'm just thinking about it.
That's very interesting.
I'm trying to go.
It's very plant.
Sometimes it's just in my head, and then I'm thinking,
I know.
yeah.
It's so no waste, kind of. We don't, no waste, home cooking, plant-based. So friendly for the environment, this tradition. So it's fantastic, to maybe feature this recipe on your blog, because we love polenta in the house.
I'll make it it's good for the polenta as well, because so many people ask about how to cook polenta. They get frustrated. Then they say polenta is not like mashed potatoes. Well, yeah, of course it's not. It's cornmeal. How do I cook polenta? And we have loads of dishes with polenta at home, you know. So, and I only managed to put a few in my book. It's just because it's not a book about polenta. But I can easily write a book about polenta.
Oh, should be your next book. Definitely.
We have so many ways, you know, just, and you know, this is one of the recipes. Oh God, it will come back to me anyway. So, so yes, these are the three main things that we need to ferment in Romania to have it for the winter season. And I just want to show you something you see here. This is just a normal jar. It's not a huge jar. I only have 2, 3, 5. Yeah, I have 5. I put the 4th like this on top. Just 5 cucumbers, gherkins. So if you find fresh gherkins, you don't need to ferment like the way we ferment in Romania in huge quantities. Just start with something small and see how it works. You know, there is nothing wrong with that, and it's not complicated. You just add water and salt, but you just need to boil the water so the salt dissolves in it. And then you pour it on top. And the method is in the book. You know, sometimes you open the jar to allow the gas to come out, and also it's good because you can sniff it and you can judge if it's the right sourness for you, or you can taste and see if it's not salty enough, and so on. So it doesn't mean that when you put the lid on, that's the end of it, and you just pray. You kind of interfere with everything. And also, I think cucumbers, I think that if you really want to start fermenting foods, I think you should start with the sauerkraut or with the tomatoes, because cucumbers are very watery anyway, and sometimes you can fail. I mean, and you don't want to start with something like that. With cucumbers, you need to add some tannin in it all the time. So add some leaves. Add lovage if you have, add cherry leaves, add horseradish leaves, any leaves from the trees. They need to have something bitter so they can keep the cucumber crisp while they are pickling. And obviously I can't pickle without garlic, so I also put, I don't know if you see it. You see it?
Yes.
I put a lot of it. Pickled garlic, fermented is just amazing, you know, and it just goes so well with everything. And you just it's just a very mild flavor. It's not garlic at all at the end of the fermentation. It's very, very nice. And what I put here, I put something that I had in the house at the time when I put this this jar. I had some coriander seeds, some mustard seeds, and some juniper berries. And I put some bay leaves as well. So I tried to put them here. Some juniper berries, coriander seeds, and bay leaves. These are fantastic in pickles and in everything. In stews, for instance, they're just amazing. Boiled potatoes with the bay leaves in them. They're just amazing. So, right. So these are the 3 things I wanted to show you about how to ferment. And what we ferment in Romania. In terms of pickles in Romania, so in vinegar, peppers in vinegar stuffed with shredded cabbage. There is a recipe in the book as well with that. And I just, when we did the photo shoot for the book, instead of going recipe by recipe, we just put all the jars that I had prepared for the pickling and the fermenting session. We put them all in one photo. So you will see them here. You have the fermented tomatoes, but then you have the pickled peppers here with the cabbage inside, and then some watermelon as well. So fermenting is not just for vegetables. Try to ferment quince, for instance. It just transforms the whole fruit. Try to ferment watermelons or cantaloupe. If there are cantaloupes, they are small, ferment them whole. They are just beautiful. You don't have to peel them the watermelons either. So ferment, what else do we have? Grapes, ferment grapes. They're so nice. They all go with meat, they go with fish as well. If you have slow cooked fish, or they are very good. So don't stop at vegetables. Just do fruit as well, because they will be, and they will make such a, they will be sensational to put them on the table, you know, when you have guests. To say, oh, I just pickled these, you know, for you. You just go really casual about the whole thing. It's just amazing. Right. What I actually wanted to show you how to make today is borscht, because it's this kind of fermented juice that we use in so many dishes. And it gives the name of an entire category of broths in Romania. So I'll try to be very gentle, because I had this jar, like let's say 4 days now. So you can see all the layers in there, and you can see the color. You see, it's yellowish, but it's a bit of a pale green as well. I would love this color on my wall in the kitchen. Actually, it's a mix that you can't find it. You know, it's very earthy as well. It's not very necessarily very like bright, and it's beautiful. And with this juice, we just strain it at the end of the fermentation process, and it can be mild if you want it to be mild, or if you leave it to ferment and then you put it in a jar or in a bottle and you put it in the fridge. It keeps fermenting and it keeps kind of developing a deeper flavor. We drink this in the morning on an empty stomach, because it's a very, very, like Cleopatra, you see. we drink it because it's very, very good, and it's the secret to a very nice and healthy skin. But traditionally, we also put it in any broth that we make. If we make with meat, or if we make vegetable broth, or anything, we add at the end of the cooking process, we add 200 ml, 500 ml, depending on the quantity of this juice, and we just get all the benefits of what it means to eat and to drink a fermented juice like this.
So is it like kombucha then? Is it the Romanian version of kombucha?
Yeah, I mean, they mix it with tea, right? Kombucha.
Yes, with tea. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know what to say. I think I prefer mine. It's because it's a matter of taste, you see, and what you grew up with. You kind of prefer this very clean, not mixed with anything flavor kind of thing. It is a sort of kombucha. It's a sort of, in Poland they have kwas. They make it with fermented bread, basically, or rye, fermented rye, rye bread. The same, it creates a juice that they drink. They have the beetroot juice as well, they ferment beetroot and they drink that. So there are other variations of the same thing. So it is traditional in Eastern Europe. I don't know if in other countries they use borscht the way we use it, because we use it not only as a juice to drink it, we use it to add flavor to dishes like the borscht broth, but also we use it in stews. I mean, if a stew is not tangy enough, we wouldn't put vinegar. We would probably put borscht if we have it in the house, you see. So again, we make bread with borscht. I mean, in a way, that's why I put this borscht to make it, because I'm in the process of filming the whole thing on how to make bread with borscht. Because it's you don't necessarily have to have sourdough and sourdough starter to make a naturally fermented bread. You can ferment anything and use that thing to be your starter. So you can ferment flowers, you can ferment leaves, you can ferment polenta with wheat, you can ferment fruit and make bread with that. So I'm in a process of making a bread with borscht from scratch. So I filmed a little bit how I put together the borscht and everything. So if you follow me on social media, especially on Instagram, where I'm very active, you will find the whole story soon, I think. This needs a few more days to ferment and to have the tanginess. So I have a similar jar here. This is a 3-liter jar. You can have a smaller one or a bigger one. Just depends on what you have in the house. I usually fill it just like to here, just a quarter. It doesn't really matter. In the book, I have a precise recipe. So if you want to follow that, follow that. But then you will just make your own recipe. So first of all, we need some wheat bran. And the bran, it's just like this. So you see there are no grains. It's just the outer skin of the wheat kernel. And I buy mine from a health shop. You know, like a health, like the thing they sell healthy things and vitamins and all sorts of things. They sell organic grain and organic flours and stuff. And they have in these shops, they usually have like barley flakes and rye flakes and stuff to put in your porridge and stuff like that. But sometimes they do have, and it just looks like this in a normal bag. It's the cheapest thing ever. I think it's like 50p something. It's just like incredible. And I'm like, yes, I'll take it all. Give it to me because I'm making my borscht all the time. So you can use only this and nothing else, and don't complicate it and keep it simple. But we also add some polenta. Any polenta that you have. Don't complicate it. Don't think, oh, it's not fine enough or coarse, so it doesn't matter. Any polenta that you have. And you put 50-50 quantities. So let's say you put, for instance, first you put a bit like 50 grams of wheat bran. You see me there? I can't really see what you see.
We see you, yeah.
And then you pick your polenta on top. And what you do after that, just use a wooden spoon. I don't really like to use metal. I don't know if there is any science behind that, but I use wooden spoon. Right, so there are 2 stages for this, just to make it successful. For the first 24 hours or 12, whatever you like, you just add 50 grams, 50 grams. And then you just put some water on top, just to cover it.
Do you need to boil the water before?
Just normal water.
Just normal.
Just normal water, but like warm, not hot, just warmish. Just, yeah, you can put warm water. That will speed up the process of the fermentation as well. And you just cover it a bit, so it doesn't have to be necessarily precise. And you close the jar. And you put it on a shelf somewhere in the pantry or in I don't know, anywhere warm, and you leave it for 12 to 24 hours. So you don't even have to reschedule your day around it, like you would do with sourdough, for instance. You just, between 12, you will see that will start to bubble, it will change color, it will be frothy. So you say, oh, okay, that's the right time then. So after that amount of time, you put the rest. So you use already 50, you put 150 wheat and 150 corn meal. And then you fill it with water, and in there you can put bay leaves. Again, you can put any kind of juniper berries. You can put lovage, like the one I use fresh lovage to put in just for the flavor. It's just amazing, because the lovage will ferment as well, and you can eat that too. So it's very, very good. In my recipe in the book, I put loads of other stuff in there, because just to show you the traditional way of when you do it full way. You also put a slice of toast, but really like dark toast, like black, basically, to put it in. Now, again, is there science behind that? This is traditional, to put some bread in it. And maybe this is a bit of a something that is left over from kvass, because they do it with bread as well. So maybe it's a kind of overlapping there of the recipes from Poland. But also I think that a bit of bread will keep the flavors clean. I tried with or without it. It's not a major difference. Honestly, I can't really say that there is a big difference between the one that when I used bread and the one when I didn't use bread. I think probably they ferment better together. But also borscht is about simplicity and what you have around the house, so you don't necessarily need to put all the ingredients. You will still get a sour, tangy, sweet as well juice at the end of it. So it's not crucial to have all the ingredients. So
what about, Irina, what about the herbs? Because I know it's quite difficult here to find lovage, for instance. And I'm wondering if it's possible to find it in the UK, or is this an Eastern European thing?
I grow my own because it's not possible. And I grow my own because it's very easy to grow. It's a plant that actually takes over everything you have around if you don't grow it in a pot. And it never dies. And you think you lost it sometimes. You go, oh God, it's gone finally, and then it's back.
Yeah, I grow my own too,
but you can use dill,
but you can't find it.
Use dill, use fennel, especially with pickles. I think dry fennel and dry dill heads with the seeds in. Those are used rather than fresh, but you can use fresh as well. So you use, I don't know, I never tried with parsley, but maybe you can. But I think maybe parsley is too watery and it will just, anyway, keep an eye on it, just see what, maybe it ferments too quickly, or maybe it's not the flavor you wanted. So you can obviously replace lovage with dill or fennel, I would do. Horseradish, again, you can put horseradish leaves in there. So any flavor that you like, you can put in your fermented foods. If you like things to be more garlicky, like I do, I put loads of garlic in everything. I even put garlic in borscht, and I think, people will go, what? But because I like it, I like the flavor you have at the end of the fermentation process. If you like, I don't know, winter savory in it, try it. It's all about, it's very forgiving. It's a very forgiving method of preserving, to preserving brine. So to come back to this, after the 24 hours and you put everything in it, you close the lid. I usually, because I'm always very greedy and I put a lot of water in it and then I regret it and I said, oh, I shouldn't have put that much. I put a deep dish like this, or a dipper tray or something, and I put the jar in it, just in case when it ferments, it will leak. And you don't want to leak it all, all over the place in your kitchen. I like the smell, but not everybody likes the smell. So it will just collect in there, and then from time to time, or every day at some point, when you have time, it doesn't have to be at a certain time in a day. Go with a wooden spoon and just go in there and stir it really, really well. I'm not sure. I mean, can you see a little bit? Yeah. Stir it really, really, really well in one direction, and then stop and go the other direction. You can actually just redistribute everything in it, and also bring a bit of air in it, so just really, that's it. Then you put the lid back, and depending on where you live, it can take 2 or 3 days, or it can take 2 weeks or a week, or just have a look, because it will stay. It will go a bit cloudy, and then it will be clear, and then it will be a bit yellow, and then it will be a bit towards a deeper green. So you know that it matures. You can see the flavors there maturing. And you can always, again, open it, sniff a little bit, taste it. Is it not sour enough? Keep it for longer. It's the way you like it. put it in the fridge, you know, and then use it in the, you know, as soon as possible. I mean, I keep mine in the fridge, but I drink it. That's the thing. I can't really say that I kept mine for ages because I forgot about it, because it never happens. I always use it. So I don't know. I wouldn't take it because in a way, at some point it will ferment too much probably, and so 2 weeks maybe, keep it and use it instead of vinegar in main dishes or anything like that, and also drink it because it's very, very healthy. So this is our borscht, the way we prepare it, and it goes, as I said, in so many dishes. So it has no connection in a way with the beetroot borscht that it's in Ukraine and Russia. And I know at the moment it's a whole conversation about Ukraine wanting to get UNESCO, I think, status for their borscht because it's Ukrainian and not Russian. And it was probably assimilated by Russian culture during communist times, like everything else. And Ukraine wants it as a national ingredient, and I don't blame them. You know, it's good in a way to find your identity. You know, I know very often when I'm asked about the uniqueness of Romanian cuisine, I'm going, oh God, you know, it's impossible in this part of the world to be unique, to have something of your own, because we have so much in common in terms of history and also geography and everything. But I think there is, you know, there is something very rewarding when you find something that's yours and it's part of your identity. So, you know, if the Ukrainians can do it, then it's amazing. A lot of chefs, you know, got behind this movement, so I think they will do it, which is really good. But we also have it in our culture, and I think we use it in different ways. Although they have their own variations, but you know, it's a very healthy way to eat in a way. So I think other people will have it too. So I would love to see if you try to ferment anything.
So Irina, you don't really need a starter, right? Because I was under this impression that you actually need somebody's borscht to start your own.
No.
Okay, good.
No. The thing is that no, you're right. You don't need a starter to start it. However, do you see this bit here? When you strain it, you can keep some of it, depending on how strong you want the second batch to be, or the third or the fourth. You can keep some of it and use it like you use a starter for sourdough. Add it to the new jar. Add the rest of the ingredients following the process, you know, first stage and second stage, and ferment them together. And then keep a little bit of this batch and make another one. You can do that. You will develop, you know, different flavors. That batch will have the flavors of your previous borscht. And then if you put other spices in it or herbs in it, then it will have a bit of that too. And then you combine it with something else and you can build your own. That's the beauty of it. You can have your own borscht, and at home there were people famous for their borscht. I mean, my mom used to say, go to this and this lady in that block of apartments, second floor, because I want to make a very good borscht today. So she didn't have time to make her own, but we knew in the neighborhood women usually, who made very good borscht. And that is also down to, obviously, their own knowledge, the fact that they were using a bit of the previous batch to make the next one. And also the environment in their house. When you start to work with live ingredients, like sourdough, like fermentation, you develop a sort of microclimate, and you have your own yeast in the air, you know, your own bacteria in the air, and they will contribute and help each other, and you will have good pickles, and you will have fermented, and you have good bread, and you know, it's all part of, that's why it's very personal in a way. You know, you have
like
people
spreading the good vibes in
yes,
other homes. Yeah. Amazing.
Yes.
Yeah.
So this is it. And just before we finish, because I know I talk a lot, I'm sorry.
Feel
just a
free,
lot to
anyone who's
say.
present, to ask questions. I'm just asking
Yeah.
my own questions, but I'm sure there's more.
I just want to show you something that I really value in my house. Because you see, we learn to ferment and pickle and make jam and stuff. We learn to make all this at home from our parents, moms, by helping people. We don't know necessarily the science behind it or how other people do it around the world or anything like that. So a few years ago, I discovered a book, and I think if you are interested in fermentation and fermented foods, it is a very important book to have in your house, apart from mine. So, sorry, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
So this is the book, The Art of Fermentation. I'm not sure if you see it properly or the other way around.
Yes, we see it, yeah.
Okay, The Art of Fermentation, Sandor Katz. It's a book, it's actually a book that doesn't have recipes, so don't buy it for that. And doesn't have photos. Don't buy it for that either. Don't buy it for photos because there are no photos. And it's kind of a sort of a bit of science in it and a bit of history of fermented foods and also how people ferment around the world. So you will see that it's just part of any culture and every culture. And we ferment in so many different ways, and we actually eat fermented foods without even knowing that they are fermented foods. Look at honey. Honey is a fermented product. Look at chocolate. Chocolate cocoa beans are fermented first before being roasted. Coffee beans, the same. It's all about fermentation because it enhances the flavor, but it also makes it more digestible, the food. So we actually ferment a lot around us. And it's not written by a science in a very scientific way. It's like a chat with a friend. It's an amazing book. So anyway, so I think you'll love it. I read it in bed. It's just something that you can't put down. And in terms of my recipes, there are just a few recipes in here. What I was able to include. And I also obviously put a lot of like jams and stuff that we do and compotes and things. And I also put a recipe about tarragon preserved in salt. Where is it here? This is a little jar. So layers of tarragon, layers of salt. And also you can add vinegar and you can preserve the tarragon in vinegar and also just take a little bit, put in your stews, and it's a very nice flavor with fish. Goes so well with fish. So that's me. If you have any questions, please just ask.
I don't know if anybody else has a...
I think
Ilana, go ahead.
Covered it wonderfully, and I'm sorry I have my pickles in the garage to show you. I pickled them 2 weeks ago because then I miraculously found green tomatoes in the market, and the guy was so happy that I bought half of what he brought that day. But I couldn't find the small watermelons. My parents used to put watermelons in the pickles, but I didn't know about cantaloupe. So I was very happy that you mentioned you can combine the pickles with cantaloupe. So yeah.
Yes, we make also like mixed pickles. So when you make the green tomato pickles, you can put the cucumbers, you can put some cabbage, you can put some peppers, and you make like these wonderful, beautiful jars with all sorts of autumn colors in there. And then when they ferment or when they pickle, they change a bit the color and they're not that bright, and they're just like beautiful to have them in your pantries.
I also added cauliflower, so bouquets
Yes.
of cauliflowers, carrots, celery roots and celery stalks, and so green tomatoes. Yeah, but my parents, I'm not sure if it's because they are from Dobroja also use alongside with horseradish a pepper. How do you call that? Mustard grains or?
Yeah, mustard seeds.
Mustard seeds. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, they do. Yes, I forgot to mention. I had coriander seeds. That's why I put this. But mustard seeds, yes, it's something that we use. And like you said, horseradish, and also horseradish, like sliced horseradish,
Yeah,
not
slice.
necessarily
Yeah.
the leaves. Yes.
Yeah.
And obviously, carrot and cauliflower. Yes, I didn't mention that. Yes, we ferment those in brine as well. So everything can be fermented, you know. And as I said, turnips and celeriac, if you like, because celeriac is a bit like, people go like, what do I do with it? Then we have a celeriac and olives dish at home, you know, tocana de, what's in Romanian? Anyway, so we have that dish, but if you ferment the celeriac, it just changes even the structure, and it changes the taste, and it's just amazing in a salad, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
So I hope you try to ferment different things and see how it goes. Otilia.
Yes, I will definitely make my borscht. You know, actually, the men in our family make borscht. My father-in-law, my uncle. So every time they come to visit us in the US, they leave us with borscht. You know, so we have a few, and we were just running out of it. And then a friend who's here in the meeting brought me some borscht from a lady in the community. So it is a community thing. It is like a community thing, and we know. Now I know somebody in the community who makes borscht, but you kind of demystified it for me, so it looks easy to make, you know, so because I thought it's a starter. And then I'm curious about the whole microenvironment that you were talking about, the scent, the vibes in the house, and the why there's, you know, certain people who make better borscht than the others. Very interesting.
Yes.
Yeah. Well,
I also heard the myth from my mother that if you are pregnant, you should not put your hand within the jar of pickled because they will spoil. And my God, I was, how come? I mean, what's the reaction, or what's the chemical reaction that can, yeah.
I don't know. It's a lot of we have a lot of superstitions in our cooking, you know. It's probably related to some sort of the change in the pH level, because, you know, but I don't think that just touching the borscht will change anything to it. It's just like, you know, crazy things like that. I'm writing. As I said before the session, I baked today, a lot today, because I'm writing an article about cozonac for Christmas, you know, our celebration bread. And I was thinking, there is so much superstition around that, making cozonac, you know. It needs to be very early, it needs to be very quiet in the house, you don't need to shout, you don't need to be dry, it doesn't need to be drafty. You just, and I just can't get it, you know. You don't have to be all this. You can shout if you want. You won't interfere with. But, you know, it's that we have a lot of things like that. Yeah. And with the pickles again.
Irina, this should be your third book.
Yeah.
Superstitions and, you know, culinary arts in Romania.
Yes, I tried to put some in my book, you know, at the end. But there were too many. I couldn't pick the right ones, and I was like, oh God, I need. Obviously, I only had, my allowance was like 242 pages for this book.
Now I'm excited. I want to read such a book. So you should definitely start writing it. It's really,
yes,
yeah.
We need to find a publisher who likes the idea.
Okay. I'm sure.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Yeah,
that's the thing. Yeah. So yeah, this is it. I hope I said everything I wanted to say, because I made a whole list today about things.
I have a question about how you pickled only the leaves of cabbage. So you wash them and then you roll them and put them in the jar, or how do you pickle the leaves? Only the cabbage leaves?
You have two methods, depending on if your cabbage is stubborn or not. You can blanch the cabbage, so you put it in hot water just for like 3-4 minutes, just to soften the leaves, and then you peel them off. Or if your cabbage is not that stubborn, like I had mine for the photo session. You see, I think in the book, at the back of this, just here, you can see these leaves already peeled. You need to cut the core in the middle, so you kind of need to go with the knife around the core of the cabbage, and that will release the leaves. And then you go deeper, and then you release more leaves, and then you. This is how you do it. And in my jars, I don't roll them. I just put them one on top of another, and they will know. And then you put the brine on top, and that's it. If you want to roll them, depending on the type of jar you have, you need to blanch them first. So again, you need to put them in hot water just to make them a bit more flexible. And then you roll them one by one, or you roll them together. So you pile like 3, 4, and then you roll them and you put them in the jar and tuck them in really well. So again, in a way, I made this because I didn't have those huge barrels where I can pickle whole cabbages. Maybe one day I will have. I don't know. I'll make one here in the UK. But it's more like an apartment version. You know, you have just a jar and you just put your leaves in there. And you will see the difference in taste, you know, because obviously you are allowed to adjust the sourness, you know, to stop the fermentation, and you use them when they are ready. You don't use them, you know, after a few months or something, and they're really, really tasty. And again, use that brine from the sauerkraut to add it to broths, again like a borscht, to add the sourness. And I drink it as well. I drink everything that I actually ferment in terms of the juice. The juice from the sauerkraut, I drink it, you know, everything, the juice from the cucumbers, as I said, in the summer, because everything is very good. It's very good for you, for me.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Irina. This is a wonderful session on pickled foods, and we will post the recording on our social media and YouTube. And yeah, we're looking forward to having you next time in December, when we'll talk about winter traditions, and maybe we'll share more about Kozonak. You know, and
I can't wait.
yes, and we'll have the article out. This is amazing. Thank you again for your work. Thank you for talking to the world about the Romanian cuisine, and thank you for joining us from the UK.
Oh, thank you for Romanian cuisine.
Thank you so much, Irina. So see you next time.
Bye, see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.